So how
Yeah.
do you think you were able to connect to this more playful side during these past couple of months?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I watched your one of your shows, and you were talking about your journaling,
Mm-hmm.
and I also like to journal a lot. And I as a kid, I think we talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
Growing up only child, it's like you got to figure out ways to entertain yourself. And so I did it right. I always had a diary. I always had, I have some from high school that are like pretty scary to look at.
When did it become less joyful and playful and more stressful, analytical?
For me, that was definitely college,
College? Okay.
um, undergrad, at Juilliard.
Oh.
Because, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'd love to hear kind of how you've been doing these past 6 months, whatever you want to share.
Yeah. I struggled a lot when the Black Lives Matter movement started really, really broke out, because I was not able to go to protests because of health concerns. And I was also sort of just like shutting down during that time in a way, and felt like oddly, like weirdly confused and pressured and alarmed by all of the things that were going on, like that were being posted on social media and all that.
Yeah.
The steady flow of that started to feel like it was happening, and I was so disconnected from it, you know. And
Right.
I had to really think about like taxing yourself, when you're already sort of the subject of the upheaval.
Right.
Taxing yourself further by, is not healthy. But also, I didn't feel like I was participating either. And it's not that, it's that we have to, what is the best way for me to participate? And I sort of came to the conclusion that I looked at where am I actually like affiliated, what
Mm-hmm.
organizations am I affiliated with currently, and watching the discussions like within classical music actually shift was like, okay, there is an opportunity here that's being presented, and I have a voice, and that's been historically hard for me to like speak up. I also have to, recognize that the discomfort around talking about race is shared. It's a shared discomfort, no
That's a
matter what
great
color
point.
you are or anything.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it either. But like in order for the conversation to evolve, we really do need to all be participating in this conversation together.
Right.
Um, so it's
Yeah.
it's a
How
big one.
Yeah. So how do you know? Well, first off, thank you for sharing all of that.
Sure.
And how do you know how to pace yourself with all of
Hmm.
this?
I've started to notice certain physical cues in my body.
Okay.
I've just been starting to try to listen to my body a little more. I have, because I do have like anxious, like I was saying, waking up this morning with the like spinning thing up my front. It's like, I have cues that I'm just starting to pay attention to, and it has to do with like, how my back feels, how my neck, how my, you know, organs are functioning, like
Mm-hmm.
how, you know, just my general physical health. Like anything you're practicing, we're practicing, composition, we're practicing anti-racism, we're practicing health, it's like as long as you return to it,
Mm-hmm.
that's what matters, right? So if you have to back off, it's okay, but you like know when and how, when you want to return, and do return.
Did you have thoughts sort of before you transitioned or before you made that decision that potentially your anxiety and depression would go away, or because I mean I just know from experience, like I've had so many fantasies about if I do this, the anxiety will the illness will vanish.
I always have these dreams of these things just like disappearing. And
Right.
I think I mean, especially with like depression and anxiety, I think I would always tell myself like, oh, it's just the situation that I'm in that's making me anxious. When really what I had to do is like confront who I am and accept that. But I do think that like transitioning has allowed for that a little bit because like, I mean, I think about like before surgery and after surgery is
Hmm.
literally night and day. Like I cannot overestimate the difference it has made for me.
So, do you feel comfortable sharing with us how art saved your life? It's a pretty big statement.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was 8 years old, my father died. A couple weeks prior to that, I was playing in one of my first youth orchestras, and we were playing this very sort of beginner arrangement of Dvorak's New World Symphony. And our conductor at the time, encouraged all of us to go to the Blockbuster video store, rest in peace, and pick up a copy of a recording and just listen to the full piece. About 2 weeks after my dad passed away, it was the first time I ever remembered seeing my mom cry. And I woke up in the middle of the night hearing her cry in her room, and I couldn't fall asleep. I put in this CD because I wanted to try to find a way to sleep. And so I was turning sort of through the CD, and I get to the second movement. And it was the first time I listened to anything that had allowed me to sort of calm my spirit and just fall asleep. And I listened to that CD every night for the next 9 months. It was the only way I could fall asleep. Fast forwarding some years down the road, we'd hit this point where for several reasons, it kind of felt like the weight of the world was kind of falling on my shoulders for a bit. And it was the first time where I had felt not only entirely alone, but I was really just handling what at the time I didn't know to process as depression. And it was the first time I had ever had, and I'm grateful to say one of the only times, I'd actually had a suicidal ideation. And I was just digging through a box of junk in my room at the time, and I found the CD that I had forgotten about altogether, this New World Symphony recording. Remembering how what I was experiencing in that moment, relative to what my mom was experiencing in the moment when I first listened to this piece, was all that I needed to kind of recenter myself a bit. I knew that I wanted to be able to provide the feeling and the relief and the safety that I felt listening to that music, and I want to be able to provide that for other people.
People keep talking about this being unprecedented times. So, as a man in his 90s, how do you feel about that statement?
Well, Julia, I've lived through a lot of unprecedented times.
Yes.
I was born in Germany at probably the worst murderous kind of thing that happened in many centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, and the Second World War, which killed over 60 million people. So, you know, this pandemic is terrible for us living through it. But once it's passed, we have to be creative enough to inspire people to see that it doesn't happen again. I think we have to always be hopeful that something that occurs like a pandemic or a murder will lead to something better.
Are you looking forward to seeing your students again?
Oh, I so am looking forward to them. I miss them. I miss
Yeah.
them all because we became so close, I felt. And there's something ironically very intimate, I find, about Zoom. We see inside each other's homes. We're dressed casually. We're just, there's just nothing separating us anymore. Yeah,
Right.
strangely enough, they're going to have to be very strong. I mean, it's been tough for every generation of musicians. My parents were so against my becoming a musician. You're going to end up on the street. You're going to end up on the street. That was like, and by hook or by crook, there are certain people who manage to kind of stay aloft, and it's hard. It has been hard, and I think it's going to be harder.
Mm-hmm.
So I invest all my hope and all my love in my students.
I mean, this question's coming from my experience writing, but do you think that there's some sort of like pressure or expectation that you're putting on yourself for that money moment?
I just put extraordinary, enormous amounts of pressure on myself anyway. It's just how I am. I'll work on 2 measures for 4 days.
I will too.
Yeah.
I do too.
But sometimes on those parts where I just can't figure it out, and at those moments I hate composing.
Yeah.
But I don't really hate it. I just hate that I can't think of it. It's frustrating. It's like playing chess and always getting checkmated.
Do you put the same kind of pressure on yourself that you do when you're writing as when you are performing, and specifically maybe with improvisation? How does that work with your piano performance?
Well, no, not in improvisation, because there the idea is that you're composing spontaneously. And the idea is you're going for things that are different. I actually think mistakes are proof that you're improvising.
Other than the glass of red wine, do you have other things that you do to kind of help you unwind before you write or before you perform?
I don't really ever unwind from music, which can be hard on a relationship. You have to explore yourself a lot, and it's a very solitary existence sometimes, and it's hard to let other people in. Music's always kind of going on in my head.
Yeah.
And I have to kind of dim it down to do other things. But like, for instance, like I'm looking at a beautiful row of flowers or a beautiful row of trees, and I'm thinking of what it sounds like in my head musically. It somehow relates, and it's hard to turn it off.
I've been watching your interviews, and I found a lot of comfort in them, and hearing about how you were managing your creative impulses, and like trying to reconnect with that in a different way. And I found that to be very inspiring and helpful, to realize that it was actually a thing that was happening, that was like physically happening to me. That that why wasn't I able to do what I want to do?
To me, theater is a place where I feel like connected to a community. Before stage and theater, I had trouble like adapting to high school and finding a true friend group.
Yeah.
But when I joined the spring show Mary Poppins in my freshman year, it opened me up to a lot of new opportunities, including meeting all my current friends.
Well, I'm sorry that your high school year, your senior year, junior year, those are such amazing years, and I'm sorry that they're being impacted, but
it's fine. It's not your fault.
Well, thank you. But I will say that college is way better.
Oh yeah, I am really excited for college.